welcome to tonight's program. I am Tricia Swanstrom. I am the head of the Ignite initiative, where we do programs based on business, career, and lifelong learning. Tonight's program I'm super excited about. Before that, I'm going to introduce we've got a couple programs coming up. I sent out an email with the links to sign up for these programs. I thought these would be beneficial based on your interest in this program, that you might be interested in these two upcoming programs as well. Social Media Savvy is Wednesday, September. I didn't write down the date. Of course I didn't. I think it's 2 weeks from Wednesday at 7 p.m. And then how to make the most of your LinkedIn profile is Thursday, September 28th at 10 a.m. And if that one's popular, based on interest and so forth, if people have an interest, we might do one at night for that one, because I think everyone could use help with their LinkedIn profile. I don't know about you, but it's overwhelming, the amount of stuff that's on there. So yeah, right? So without further ado, I'm going to let Brian Watkins is our presenter tonight, and I'll let him introduce himself because he's way more exciting than I am.
Thank you, Tricia. I appreciate it. Before I get started, I'll let everyone know that I tend to be a walker. So I'm to make sure I don't get out of the camera, I'm going to try and hold myself down. But Sarah, if I start moving, just kind of wave your hand so that they can see me. So good evening. I'm very excited about this program. I love the show Ted Lasso. I thought it was great. I've seen all 3 seasons multiple times, and I use this presentation as an excuse to have to watch it again, refresh myself on it. But I want to assure you, if you haven't seen it, Sarah, have you seen it? Okay. So if you haven't seen it, though, I'm going to give you, I'll do a little summary on some of these scenes that I'm talking about, and I won't have any spoilers. So that's the key thing in there, but you'll get the gist of it and you'll understand these characters, and hopefully it'll get you excited for the show. Now, when I first watched the show, I watched it just because everyone was raving about it. I was like everyone else. I got to see the show. And as I was watching it, I realized there's a lot of these lessons that were very similar to what I teach professionals. I teach managers a lot, and I teach professionals. And these messages, these underlying messages were all there. So I kind of started formulating this presentation and put it together. Before I get into that, just a little bit about me. So my name is Brian Watkins. I've been in learning and development for, hate to say it, over 25 years. Does it feel like that long? But right now I do coaching and training for people managers. So anybody who manages a team of people, I help them become great at what they do. I do presentations, I write articles, I do a bunch of stuff along that. That's really my passion. And for those of you on Zoom, just a couple things. The chat is available and it's being monitored by Tricia. So if you want to leave any questions as I'm going, just put kind of the hashtag Q and then write your question out. That'll help Tricia find them as we go. Hashtag AHA is if I say something and it really kind of resonates with you, I'd love to know what that is, just to understand, get the feel, the vibe. And then if you do disagree with me on anything, you could put hashtag dis and let me know what that is, and we can discuss that, and I'll prove how you're wrong and all those. No, this is not your controversial topic, so I usually get none of those, but if you have one, great, let's go for it. And then this usually is about 40 minutes, and then there's plenty of time for discussion and questions afterwards. So the first point that I want to bring out is it's about people not being an expert. That's a key message of this show. So the show starts out in a fashion that would never, ever happen in real life. But Ted Lasso is a college football coach in the Midwest for this small college, and he gets hired to be the coach of a soccer team in London in the Premier League professionals, the highest level there is, right? And everybody's like, this is insane. What professional would go, I'm a football coach and I'm going to go do soccer, right? But one of the things we learned from Ted Lasso that he believes, and he's right at, is that expertise isn't necessarily the main focus. He knows I can go and there's, these kids have been playing soccer their whole life, right? There are other coaches. I can find professionals to do that. But where he excels is with people. So he doesn't go in there going, I don't know anything about, football, soccer. And it's kind of funny when he goes, oh, let's go to the practice. And the assistant coach goes, it's training. They use all different words there, but he doesn't care. He's willing to learn, but his specialty is people. And that is a change that has taken over the business world. When I started the business world years ago, right? It was you went to work and you probably had some friends, but it was work. You didn't socialize all that much. Now it's much more relationship built, right? My bosses didn't care who my girlfriend or spouse or anything was. They were like, we have to keep a distance. Nowadays, bosses want to know all that stuff. It helps them build that relationship with them. So one of the things to think about, expertise is necessary at times, but are you letting that get in the way of relating to people? Okay. Again, you probably want an expert doctor doing a surgery on you. But do you let expertise get in the way of relating to people? Because that people relationship is key. Brings us to our second point. Every person in the professional world has three types of power. Okay. They have competence power, which is how good they are at their job. They have positional power, which is what their role is. I'm an individual contributor. I'm a boss. I'm a director. I'm a VP, those type of things. Then they have relationship power. We tend to think that they go in that order. Competence is first, power is second, and relation is third. Ted Lasso knows and teaches us that it's actually the opposite. Relationship power is more important than positional power. And the way we see this is in that first episode. So now he's going over and he's the new coach of this team. And the players are like, this is a joke. You can't possibly think that this is going to work. You know nothing about our sport. You know nothing about us. You know nothing about our country. This is a joke, right? And the gentleman you see there in the blue bucket, that's not a garbage can. That's an ice bath that he's in. That's Roy Kent. Roy Kent is my favorite Ted Lasso character. You're going to find out that of the Ted Lasso show, Ted Lasso is my third favorite character. Roy Kent is my favorite. And Roy Kent, the way we get this demonstrated is when he introduced himself in that first episode, Roy Kent says, I can't believe I'm ending my career playing for a clown like you. Now, 99% of the managers in the world would start going, look, I know you don't like it, but I'm the boss and this is here and I'm going to expect you to follow along. That's positional power. That's saying I'm the boss. He kind of goes, okay. And then Roy huffs out. He huffs out of every scene, it appears. He doesn't know how to do anything but huff out. And he turns to his assistant coach and he goes, if he's mad now, wait till we turn him. He's going to be furious then. He knows he has that relationship ability and he knows that's his best weapon, right? Again, all of us would have been like, sorry, they're paying me to be the boss. Listen. He was like, you don't have to like me. I'm going to turn you. You're going to like me by the end, right? So how many times do you worry about results instead of those relationships? And you take that for granted, okay? If you start using your position, you're going to lose a lot. You have to start using that relation. And that only happens by humanity. So if you ask me to sum up the entire Ted Lasso series in one word, I would say it's humanity. It's embedded into every part of the show. And we see this with the relationships he builds with everyone as we go up through this entire thing. Third point, and I didn't really catch this until this past third season, right, the last season, but the way celebrations play a key part of everything throughout the show. And they celebrate everything, little things, big things. It doesn't matter if they won the championship game or, someone put their shirt on right. They celebrate with incredible vigor. They don't just go, oh yeah, high five, woo. Everything's an incredible celebration. In one of the first episodes, he shows this where Rebecca, who owns the club, she's in her suite and she's overlooking the field, and he has the players line up on the field laying down to say, "Hi, boss." Right? And then she yells down, "Hi, Ted." And they celebrate like they just won the championship game. They're running around and they're hugging and they're high-fiving and they're screaming. Celebrations are great. Celebrations bring us together. Okay. You're going to find there's a couple characters that in this first season, second season pretty much too, really don't like each other. But when the celebration occurs, they still celebrate together. This is a joyous thing. So celebrate everything, big and small, right? And this applies for work, this applies for family, this applies for everything. Celebrate everything. Okay. They do an excellent job in this show of celebrating every little thing. Fourth point, fix the water pressure. So in the first episode, when Ted shows up and he's talking to them, he's like, "Look, is there anything you guys need?" And someone offhandedly says, "The water pressure in the shower is really bad." He's like, "Okay, we can fix that." Sure enough, a little bit later in that episode, we see that it's so powerful it basically knocks someone down. But the point is, and the reason Ted asked is Ted understands the say to do ratio. Okay, if he says I'm going to do it, he does it. So that ratio of what he says to what he does is pretty close to 1-to-1. Now, he does that because it builds relationships, it builds trust, it builds all these great things. Think about the people in your professional, personal life. The ones who you know are going to get something done when they say it's going to get done, the ones you trust the most, the ones you have the best relationship with. Those people who, say things and you're like, "I'm not really sure if they're going to do that." Those are the ones we're kind of iffy. I had a boss once, great guy, really nice guy, but he was one of those who, he would have been a great tech bro, exaggerating everything, right? And we used to joke that, he's going to do 50% of what he says. We just don't know which 50%. There wasn't a lot of trust there. When he would say something, we'd be like, "Okay, we'll wait to see." Right? But Ted Lasso knows everything he does. If he says, "I'm going to do this," I'm going to do it. Okay. And he fosters this throughout the entire thing. You could see it over and over again. He's very conscious of not disappointing people, not meeting their expectations. And that's what he does. So it's fixing that water pressure was a little sign that he's a guy who pays attention very closely to that. 5, learn people's names. Okay. So the character you see standing next to Ted there is Nate. So Nate is, when he gets introduced to him, Nate is the kit man, which is essentially the gopher. He's the guy who does the laundry, gets the shoes ready, makes sure the uniforms are laid out, gives them water. He's, for all intents and purposes to the team, he's a nobody, right? And they kind of treat him like that, right? Well, when first Ted shows up, the first person he bumps into is Nate, and he says to Nate, "Well, what's your name?" And Nate doesn't say anything, and he's kind of waiting there and waiting there. Finally, Nate's like, "Oh, you're serious." And tells him his name and that. And then a little later in the episode, Nate's off in the distance, and Ted Lasso goes, "Hey, Nate, come here." And Nate verbally says, he knows my name. As if this was the first person in the club that knew his name and was treating him like a person, right? So how much time are you spending as a professional getting to know people, their names, versus pushing your agenda? Okay. We have all had the salesperson in our life, whether that be the telemarketer calls you or whatever, who does that little small talk, right? "Oh, hey, how are you tonight?" And you know that they're just waiting to get into their pitch, right? They're only giving you small talk because that's in the sales guide, right? We don't trust them. We're the ones that are like, "Okay, come on, get on with it," right? That's not getting to know someone. That's building their agenda. You're pushing your own agenda. Okay. So when I came in tonight, I introduced myself to Sarah, to Tricia, to Sarah, to Donna, all these people, right? I'm trying to remember names. Now, I will tell you as a parent, Sarah, you a parent? One of the little tricks with parents is if you remember our kids and things about our kids, we love you, right? Because we love our kids and we like talking about our kids. So that's one of the things when I go into managers and I go, how well do you know your team? They're like, I know my team so well. I said, great. I'm going to randomly pick people and I'm going to find out their spouse's name, their kid's name, how old their kids are, where they go to school, and if they have a pet. And if you can't answer those for me by this random person, you don't know your team. You'd be surprised how many people don't. Be like, oh yeah, that's Bill. He's got his wife, Jenny. They got a kid. I don't know how old he is. And he complains about the dogs. And you're like, okay, you don't know people. Ted, when he knows something, he remembers it forever. Because he knows that's how you build that relationship. That's how you build that trust. I do it with people all the time when we're chatting and I find something out about them and I jot a note. Then I'm talking to them 3 months later and I go, oh, hey, when we talked last time, your son was starting high school. How's that going? And they're like, oh. I mean, all I did was write a note. And then before I was going to talk to this person again, looked at it. I don't have that great of a memory. But those are important things to do. So get to know people. And that will foster that relationship even more. So find your Coach Beard. So Coach Beard is my second favorite character. So it goes Roy Kent, Coach Beard, then Ted Lasso. So Coach Beard, and in the picture on there, you probably see a little better online. He does have a beard, right? Coach Beard is Ted Lasso's confidant. He's been with him for a long time. Actually, in season 3, which you're not up to yet, we find out a lot more about his backstory that's fascinating, right? And I won't spoil it for you. But the great thing about Coach Beard is he's not only there to be Ted's helper, he's also the one who holds Ted accountable, right? So when I said, Ted Lasso said, I don't know anything about soccer. I'm a people person. Well, when they were going over there, Coach Beard learned everything about it, right? So when I said, he referred to it as practice and they said it's training. He referred to the field and they said it's the pitch. That was Coach Beard correcting him on all those things, right? Coach Beard was his helper, his partner. They worked together on everything. But Coach Beard also was the one who would tell him when he was off track. He's the one who would come to him and say, hey, that's not right. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling, and that's not right. And there's a fascinating part in season 1 towards the end where Roy Kent is that aging player who's slowing down, right? And they need him off the field, right? They need speed and they need him off the field. And Ted's like, no, I'm not going to sit him down. I told him I would support him. I'm not going to sit him down. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. And Coach Beard kind of yells at him and says, no, we got to do this. And Ted goes, no, I'm not. So then the next day at practice, Coach Beard is giving him the silent treatment. Ted Lasso says, oh, you're giving me the silent treatment, huh? And he turns away and looks somewhere else and he comes back and Coach Beard is further away. He's like, oh, you're doing that, huh? He was letting him know, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to rethink these things. Eventually, Ted did say, yeah, you're right. I have to do this. But that's Coach Beard's job. He's not only there to be the technical expert, but he knows Ted so well that he knows when he's making that mistake. So do you have that person in your life who you can go to or who can come to you and can say, I know you think this is right, it's wrong. I had a boss once who loved him. He's a great guy, awesome manager. We were with a company that was being bought out. And it was clear that in this buyout, we were going to lose people. And I remember having to say to my boss, who he loved everyone on the team. So he was like, I can't lose anybody. He was beside himself. And I said, look, you may have to let people go. You just have to come to terms with it. You may have to let me go. You just have to come to terms with it. Because that's the way this is going to work. Otherwise, you're not going to be here. Right? Ted Beard is that guy for Ted. They need each other so much. All right, I'm checking my time. I'm doing well here. 7 is hold people accountable. But if you look at my slide here, the key word is compassionately. Like we all been told, hold people accountable, right? We do that all the time with our kids. You know, if you're going to punish them, punish them. Don't go back on it. You got to hold them accountable, all those things, right? But what he teaches us is that compassion part. So the gentleman in the picture you see there is Jamie Tart. And Jamie Tart is Roy Kent, but young. So Roy Kent is the old aging guy who's on the end of his career. He's on the last legs. He was a star, but he's kind of falling away. Jamie Tart is the guy whose career is just starting. He's good. He's the best on the team. And he knows it. And he's not afraid to tell people he knows it. And when Ted comes in, he's like, look, I'm not going to go with all your rah-rah stuff. I just score goals. Just leave me alone. Right? And Ted does his relationship thing. He kind of doesn't push it. But then there's one part where there's a game where Jamie does something he's not supposed to do. Now, this is his star player, and Ted Lasso pulls him off the field, substitutes him out. Again, now that we're like, okay, good. But Ted Lasso didn't do what most people do. I watch a lot of baseball. I watch a lot of football. And when a coach pulls a guy out because he's mad at him for something or he did something wrong, you almost always see the scene of him yelling at him. The coach is yelling at him. Ted just pulls him off, and as he walks by him, he goes, it's okay, Jamie, we'll get him. We'll pick him up for you. Then in the press conference later, someone says, well, what about Jamie? Is he not going to play next game? And he's like, no, he's going to play. He's too important to our team. That was just a little something we're going to work out. He held him accountable, but he didn't throw him under the bus. He did it very compassionately. He said, you have to do this, but I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to rip you to the press. I'm not going to do any of these things, which we would all expect and we would see very naturally. We see it all the time. He does it very compassionately. So when he holds you accountable, he still does it in a, I hate to use the term, but loving way. Really. There's another scene in season 2 where Sam, another character we'll get introduced to, storms off the field after yelling at it. And Sam swore, and Sam never swears. Right? And Ted Lasso went inside and went, what are you doing? And they kind of had it out, and the player realized he was wrong. And Ted Lasso's like, well, I still got to make you run laps. And the player's like, oh, yeah, I'm glad. Oh, please. Right? He's like, I got to hold you accountable. But it was never in a mean way. I need to punish you. I need to get you back. So how many people are you holding accountable with compassion? It's almost easy to hold them accountable without that. It's a little harder to do it when you're trying to have that compassion. It makes you pause a little more. 8, good ideas come from anywhere. So I love this screen snap because this picture shows you everything you need to know about Ted's personality. You can see where where the players, the magnets he would use for the players, he's got a smiley face. Right? You don't picture that in a pro sports locker room anywhere, but he does it. So in this scene, what's going to happen is they're about to play the best team in the league and they have to win. And Ted goes to the coaches, hey, how do we win? And they're like, we can't. He's like, no, tell me what we have to do to win. And they're like, no, this other team's better, faster, stronger. They're everything. There's no way we can win. There's nothing we can do. Ted's like, that can't be. Finally, he gets the epiphany, and in this is a extra lesson, not really a life lesson, but one of the things is when you can't beat someone at their game, cause chaos. I had a teacher, MBA teacher, used to say, when you're competing with another company, if you can't beat them at football, make them play baseball. Right? So he says, we're going to create chaos with this team that's better than us in every facet of the game. We're going to get them so confused and thrown off. So he pulls the team together and he says, okay, tell me every trick play you've ever learned in your life, from the time you were a little kid till today. And they start yelling out names, and they're all the great names like, Loki's toboggan. What does that mean, right? But they do all these plays, and then he gets to the point where he says, we're going to go learn all of these plays. We're just going to create chaos. Right? And the point of the matter is, those good ideas came from anywhere. He never stopped looking for a good idea. He never said, no, the coaches make the game plan. There's another scene where Nate, we find out later that Nate's a genius. He's just a genius in many ways. But Nate's the kit man. He's the one no one listens to. And at one point, Nate says, you know, I was thinking I've kind of got this. It's not going to work. And Roy's like, give it. And he looks at it and he goes, Coach Beard, do you think this will work? He goes, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's go out and practice it. He didn't care who the idea came from. They used it. And that's what he does here. Good ideas come from anywhere. So when you need something, do you open it up to solicit suggestions? Or do you close the world down? Right? So many times we go, oh, this is a big problem. I got to hunker down with these one or two people who are really truly experts. We're going to figure it out. No, let's open it up to everybody. Because you never know where that great idea is going to come from. Right? And in the business world, professional world, we hear this all the time. You know, Post-it notes were an accident. Right? Viagra was an accident. There were all these things that were accidents. They did it for one thing and they realized it worked for another, right? So you got to solicit all those suggestions and listen to them all honestly, which is always the hard part. Getting ideas is great, but we're always like, no, that won't work. No, that won't work. No, that won't. You got to listen to them and say, yeah, let's try it. Let's see what it does. And how, and I'm asking questions to an audience that can't really respond to me, but how do you think the team felt when they were doing that? Right? When they're throwing out ideas and they're part of the process, they're bought into it much more. Oh, one of my favorite parts. If you're on social media anywhere, you've probably seen a clip of this scene. It's my favorite scene. So to kind of set the stage. So Rebecca is the owner, but she's only the owner because she got it from her ex-husband in the divorce. And her ex-husband, to put it nicely, is not a good guy. He's really not. So there's this scene where they're at a bar and Rebecca and her ex-husband are there and he's just being a jerk. You can imagine any other word you could insert there. And at one point, Ted says, tell you what, let's play darts. If I win, you have to leave us alone. You leave Rebecca alone. If you win, you can make the starting lineup for the next couple of games. And everybody's like, are you crazy? You're an American. We play darts here in the pub all the time. You know, and even the ex-husband pulls out, oh, I forgot I had my special dart kit, you know, because he's got his own because he plays so often. So they get to the certain point in the game where Ted's losing, right? And it's looking really bad. And he turns to someone and says, what do I need? She's like, you need 2 triple 20s and a bullseye. And he goes into this soliloquy where he goes, I've been underestimated my whole life. And one day I was taking my kid to school and I saw this written on the wall, be curious, not judgmental. And I started thinking, all those people who were underestimating me, they weren't curious. They were just judging me. They didn't know anything about me. It wasn't about me. And then he goes and he hits the triple 20. Right? And then he says, if you would have just asked, Ted, have you played a lot of darts? I would have said yes, every Sunday with my dad at the sports bar. Right? And then he hits the next triple 20 and everybody's like, ah. And he's like, the whole point is, are you asking why on something or are you asking why not? Are you judgmental or are you curious? Because that curiosity is what feeds a lot of great things. Right? And it's those little, it's a little twist sometimes, but it's a huge twist in a relationship. Like if someone comes to you and says, hey, can we do X? And you go, what? It's a lot different than going, tell me more. Right? And once you start getting into that, you're being curious. You're asking why. Tell me about that. Where'd that come from? Right? So I'm almost been married 30 years. And one of the lessons I had to learn was asking that, why are you saying that? Why are you doing that? Right? I was used to just going, no, we're not doing that. Or that's silly. I was it's like, wait, maybe there's something underneath there. And it only took me 28 years to figure it out, but we finally gotten there. Boy, I hope she's not watching. If she is, huh? But yeah, let's be curious. Let's not be judgmental. Let's start asking why. And let's take everything in and go, let's think about it. Let's not shut it down. Let's not think of all those reasons why not. Address the real issue. Okay. So in this scene, you see two players there. One is Colin, one is Isaac. Okay. In the third season, there's a nice arc about Colin, story arc, where Colin is a gay player that no one knows is gay. He's been hiding it from everyone. But it comes out sometime, and Isaac, who's the captain, learns it. Now, when he learns it, he shuts down. He won't talk to Colin. He won't do anything like this. All right? And we're all thinking, oh, he's a homophobe, right? This is going to hurt their friendship, this whole thing. And he eventually blows up because he's maintaining all this inner secret and rage. He blows up and he attacks a fan in the stands. Okay. And Roy, who, even though he's gruff and he's mean and can't go 3 words without saying the F word, right? He goes in and he says to Isaac, he's like, you didn't go in the stands because of what he said. There's something else bothering you. If you don't figure it out, it's going to eat at you and cause you problems. He was saying, I don't know what the real issue is, but that wasn't it. What is it? You have to dig down deep. You have to figure out what that issue is. And if you're like me, I'm watching it going, he's going to have to come to terms with this, homophobia thing because this is a friend of his. And I was wrong. That's not what it is at all. In fact, this is the only spoiler I'll give. Right? This is the only spoiler I give. But what we find out is at the end, Isaac goes to him and says, what did I do that make you think you couldn't trust me? He was mad because he felt he wasn't a good enough friend. It had nothing to do with him being gay. And it's a great juxtaposition because you spend this episode watching him go through that, and you're thinking, oh, it's this, it's this, it's this. And then all of a sudden it comes out that it's something totally different. And you as a viewer have to go, man, I had that assumption too. And you almost have to check your thing. So it's kind of like this multi-layered thing. And I'm not usually smart enough to catch all those things. So that's how well done it was, that it was catching those. But you have to start digging into those root causes. Why are you blowing up? What's bothering you deep down? How do you address that? Because that's where you get those things. Which means in your professional relationships, when someone's acting weird, right? And so maybe it's not that they're just being a jerk about things. Maybe there's something else going on. One of the things I teach managers is dealing with troubled employees. When I say troubled, employees that are causing trouble, right? Coming in late, leaving early, being rude to people, whatever it is. And I don't tell them, come in and tell him what he's not supposed to do. Hey, you got to be here at 8 a.m. Say, what's going on that you don't get here till 8:30 every day? The whole question shifts it. And you start digging in deep, and he's like, my wife started this new job and I have to take the kids to school and it's taking me out of my route. And okay, well, we can work on that. As opposed to, oh, well, you're just being a jerk and sleeping late. So address those real issues, dig down deep. All right, I got it. Optimism is infectious. So the player you see with his arms stretched out is Danny Rojas. Danny Rojas is a young player from Mexico who joins the team who is oblivious to anything bad in the world. He walks out and he's like, football is life, right? Everything in him is happy. Ted, who's supposedly the optimist in this show, he makes Ted seem like Eeyore, right? Because he goes around and everything's happy for him type of thing. And what he teaches us is that optimism he has is infectious. Everybody picks it up. So I heard a podcast many years ago with a Navy SEAL. And the person interviewing him asked, said, you're in these situations all the time. It's you and 7 guys trapped in a building. There's 400 guys surrounding you, trying to kill you. You're running out of ammo. How do you not panic? And he said, we learned something in training. Calm is contagious. When I'm calm, my buddy's going to be calm. The second one of us panics, we all start to panic. Right? Same with optimism. It's contagious. Right? So are you the one who's encouraging people, or are you the one bringing them down? Right? One of the great, a lot of motivational speakers, and one of the great sayings we hear a lot is, you're a composite of the 5 closest people in your life. They impact you one way or another, and you start to become very similar. Right? So do you want to be the optimistic, happy guy who's going forward? Do you want to be the curmudgeon? And I say that as someone who acts like a curmudgeon a lot of the time. Right? But we want to be, he's that optimism. Saying, in the second season, he goes through a really strange incident. The second season is this great mental health arc through the whole thing. It's wonderful. But he has a situation where he has to talk to a sports psychologist. And he gets healed. He's all of a sudden better. And Coach Lasso says, what did the doctor say? That healed you. So I know, so I can help. And Danny says very clearly, she told me football is life. But sometimes football is death. Sometimes football is football. And then left. And everybody's like, okay. But what he learned was his optimism is who he is. And he doesn't have to hide those other things. But that optimism is really who he is. So be that one that encourages other people. You will infect them eventually. Unless you're hanging around with 5 other Eeyores, then they're going to drag you down. And you better think about that. All right, I get 2 more. So be a goldfish. So Sam is the player there. Sam is a young player from Africa. He's away from home, right? He's a good player, but he's struggling. Probably a lot of homesickness, a lot of different things going on. And he's making a lot of mistakes. And one of the practices, he makes a mistake, and you could see he's got that body language of, like he knows he made a mistake and he's feeling bad about it. Ted calls him over and says, you know what the happiest animal on earth is? And first thing you see Sam looking at him like, what? Where's this going? Right? And he says, it's a goldfish. Do you know why? Because goldfish only has a memory of 10 seconds. So when something bad happens, a goldfish forgets it right away. It's like, so be a goldfish. You made a mistake. Learn from it, forget it, move on. Don't live in the past. So how often do you dwell in the past on that negative thing? And it carries over in everything. Right? And you make a mistake and you dwell in it. Imagine if at the start of this presentation, I knew I made a mistake. Now I probably did, but no one really knows it because you don't know my presentation and I wasn't paying attention that much, right? But if I spent the whole rest of the time going, okay, I made a mistake, this presentation would be horrible. I would feel horrible, right? Be a goldfish, forget things, move on. Learn from them, but move on. You can't change the past. And this be a goldfish thing recurs through the entire series. Whenever something bad happens, someone says, be a goldfish. Right? Let's move on. Let's do all these great things. Last one. This is my favorite one, and I love ending on this one. Every choice is a chance. So I mentioned season 2 had that mental health arc. And Ted Lasso suffers some issues, right? And he thinks it's hidden, but eventually it comes out in the press. Right? So it's out on the front pages of the paper. And if you know anything about London press, it was not dealt with compassionately. Right? And afterwards, Ted pulls the team together and he says, look, fellas, I want to apologize that you learned about that through the newspaper. And the team, they're all bought in now. They're all like, don't worry about it, coach. We got your back. Don't worry about it. You're good with us, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I had a chance to trust you, to share this with you and let you show me how much you care about me. and I messed up that choice. Every choice you make is a chance to show trust, to show love, to show compassion, show graciousness. He's like, so I'm sorry, I made the wrong choice. And think about that in our daily lives. You make choices all the time. How conscious are you of what they do? Because every choice you make is a chance. You probably make thousands of decisions throughout the day. Most of them you don't even think about, right? What are you going to wear? What are you going to eat? What are you going to do? All those type of things. But think about the times when you can make a choice and make a difference. Okay. I live in the northwest suburbs, and I go to Mariano's, my grocery store, and the one by us, they get developmentally challenged people to do bagging, right? Now, when that person's there, and I'm in, I don't like grocery shopping, right? And I have a choice. When I get to that end, I could just pay and grab my thing and go out, or I could turn to this person and say, "Hey, thank you. How you doing?" Or if they see something to me, start a conversation with them. And there have been times where, the checkout person is trying to get me to, finish the transaction and give me my receipt. And I'm talking with them going, "Oh, so you're a Cubs fan." Oh, it's a choice I make. It's a very conscious choice, just to bring a little humanity to the world. So when you have those chances, what choice are you making? We spend a lot of time thinking about the things we can't control: traffic, taxes, all that stuff, right? But all the things you can't control, are you making the right choices? And are you making the choice to make the world better or make your life easier? It's great if both can collide. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen all that often, right? So that's what we want to do. So that's my presentation. We're going to open things up for questions. And but before that, I do want to say thank you for making the choice to be here with me in this hour. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully it was a little fun. Said I love talking about the show. I love doing this. So it's been my pleasure, and I appreciate your attention. And this is my contact information. If you ever have any question, please feel free to email me. We're doing a LinkedIn session in a couple of weeks. I'm big on LinkedIn. If you're on it and you want to connect with me, find me, and you'll do it. Just type in Brian Watkins, Buffalo Grove, where I live, and you'll find. If you just type in Brian Watkins, you'll get like a gajillion of them, and you won't be able to find me. So just make sure you do Illinois or something like that, and you'll find me. And I'd love to connect with you. And so with that, I will see if any questions came in or any comments or anything. If not, you have a minute to build them in.
I have a question.
Please.
I want to know when did you come up with I think this is genius. I think this is brilliant. How did you come up with the idea to combine career with the show Ted Lasso? Were you watching it and you just had a light bulb moment, or how did that whole thing transpire?
Well, thank you for the compliment. But really, it was luck. So as I said, I do management coaching and training, and I was working on some new materials for things, right? And I was doing a lot of studying and writing and reading and things like that. And it just so happened that a lot of the concepts, so this was during the start of COVID, right? And at that time, there was, if you were reading anything professionally, they were talking about how hard managers' job was, because everyone was remote now. And you had to not only worry about work, but you had to ask how they were doing. And someone wrote an article for a trade magazine that said, we're really taxing managers because we're asking them to care about their teams as people. We're asking about them to be compassionate. We're asking them to be considerate. And I wrote a subsequent article that said, shouldn't we have been doing that all along? Right? So I'm deep in this world thinking of these things, and I'm watching this show. And again, this show is all humanity. So I started thinking, at one point I was thinking of thing, and I don't know which one came first, but it was like, that's very similar. And then as I rewatched the show, I started to make all these different connections. So like, oh yeah, I teach that. He says it differently. But that's a great example of what I teach. So it really was luck and partially COVID, being stuck in the house. Because I'm not a binge watcher of TV. So the fact that I could sit and watch a season of something was pretty rare because I couldn't go anywhere else. And I watched sports, and all the sports were shut down. And I was like, okay, there's nothing for me to do. Let me watch this show. But yeah, it's luck. I'll say that. Luck, because it came at the right time for me. So, Sarah, you have any question? Anything about the show? What do you like most about the show?
Late to the show, but I have like 4 episodes left.
Okay.
And I love it so much. I work remote. I worked remote before COVID even. But I need to like get away from my desk. So I make sure I eat downstairs, watch the show.
Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, that's kind of what drew me to this class.
Otherwise, the people online can't hear you.
Okay. It was just really, I thought it was a genius idea to merge these two things because it makes sense, and hopefully you're giving this presentation at companies too, or like elsewhere.
Tell your company about it. Be happy
Okay.
to do it for them.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the perfect timing, right? Because you were remote beforehand, so it wasn't as huge of a shift for you. But for me, I was going in the office every day, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm at home, and I'm at home with my wife, who's now working at home. My daughter, who's supposed to be finishing college, like came home for spring break, and they said, "Don't go back." And my other daughter, who's in high school. We don't have that big of a house, so it was like, okay, we're kind of getting on each other's nerves at this point. And it was April, still wasn't nice enough to hide outside, set of things. Yeah, it was the perfect show at the perfect time, it felt like, for everyone to do that. And yeah, to see these concepts and that humanity came out. I love that. So who's your favorite character?
Right now it's Keely Jones.
Oh,
I'd say.
okay, Keely.
I like her. Or Rebecca.
See, and I occasionally get grief, and it's well-earned grief, that I don't focus on Rebecca or Keely at all in this presentation. And there are ways I could, I guess, if I really thought about it. So someone else has said that too. Someone said, well, why didn't you talk about Rebecca? And I'm like, that's a really good question. So Rebecca, part two,
Yes.
part two, the female version, right? Just because there's some interesting female characters. There's Rebecca, there's Keely, there's Jane, Beard's girlfriend. Third season, there's Alex, right? The business owner, right? Is it Alex?
Jack? Maybe?
Jack, you're right,
yeah.
it's Jack. So yeah, there's some interesting characters in there. So, all right, we've got the second one planned. So put it on the calendar.
Yes,
So, but yeah, so I guess we'll end it since there aren't any questions or anything, but we'll check. As she's doing that, Trisha has this presentation and she'll be able to email it out to you. So if you didn't write down my contact information, you've got it. But you'll have this presentation. Feel free to share it.
I will definitely be emailing you all within the next couple weeks or month with the slide presentation and the recording of this presentation. I'd like to thank Brian and all of you for showing up, and I hope to see you sometime soon in another Ignite program.